and Supervisor Luck are out of town, and everyone else is here today in person. So we do have a quorum. We can conduct our business. Agenda item number 3 is agenda approval. We have a shorter agenda today. It's 14 points. We have a couple meatier topics up front, and then hopefully I think it will go a little quicker as we get to the end. And thanks to staff for getting all these meeting materials to us by Friday morning, so everyone could have the weekend to review these if they had time. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Cooey, second by Brewer. All those in favor of the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, we have an approved agenda. Agenda item number 4, previous meeting minutes. So today we have 2 sets of minutes. We have one set from June 15th and another set from June 18th. The previous one was for our closed session regarding union negotiations, and the latter one was our regular second meeting of the month. So I'm looking for a motion to approve both sets of minutes at the same time.
So moved.
Okay, motion by C,
I'll second it.
second by Gentis. Any changes to suggest to the minutes? Okay, all those in favor of the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, that motion carries. We have approved minutes. Thank you, Mr. Bell, for taking both sets of minutes. Or maybe to Mr. Langreck for doing one of those also, for closed session. Agenda item number 5, ambulance purchase of REC building using fund number 75. Mr. Langreck, would you like me to hand it off to you, or would you like me to hand it off to Mr. Gudgeon?
I can tee it up here and then I'll pass it over to Director Gudgeon. Mr. Chair, looking today for a motion, first to allow the use of fund number 75 in the purchase of the REC building and renovation for an ambulance garage and emergency management center. Second item today is looking for a recommended resolution of the REC building to the county board for their June 2021 meeting. The background on this is lengthy. I will defer to Director Gudgeon at this time to kind of summarize and bring forward the pertinent data, the history points, and the needs and figures that have been put into this project. Director Gudgeon.
Thank you. So I guess what I'd like to do is just start out by talking about the facility itself. And there's been discussion going all the way back to 2017 and before about proper facility for the ambulance service. And really what spurred that conversation on was hiring of staff and needing places for them to sleep and such. In 2018, the conversation spurred on a little bit more. We were looking at various alternatives to house not just the ambulance service, but emergency management. Our LEPC, which is the Local Emergency Planning Committee, has to do with hazardous materials and other items of support to the county when there is a disaster or an emergency. And the current facility that we have has served its purpose for better than 40-some years. It was 1982 when they moved in there. The ambulance service did, and it started in 1972. But with the operation model that we currently have right now, when we have people spending the night, we only have one location where an individual can actually stay or sleep. We have no real shower facilities, no laundry facilities. We don't have an area where we can cook a meal. And for all of us that have served previous to having this blended crew system, it worked out okay because we were going back home. We were taking care of things at home. But that's not the model that we have currently. And so the facility, as it stands right now, is not adequate, although we're doing our best to just make do with what we have. So it was during that process that there was conversations held with within the committee of, what could we do? How can we make this happen? How we funded, so on and so forth. And eventually the members of the county board took it up and put it into the bond issuance or the borrowing for a total of $600,000 to be put towards a facility. And I believe that number probably came from the fact that at once upon a time, the building that is currently owned by the Richland Electric Cooperative, it was mentioned that building could be for sale, would be purchased for that amount of money. So moving forward, once the Joint Ambulance Committee and the membership thereof knew that the county was going to include the $600,000 into borrowing, they immediately started looking for adequate space and locations. And the REC, or the Richland Electric Cooperative Building, was one of those locations. The building owned by Greg Vitesnik was looked at as well. We looked at a lot out on Highway 14 that was owned by Jane Ewing, I believe, from Ewing Realty. There was another location on South Orange Street that had tenants in it, small business owners that were already there. And we came down to the Vitesnik building and the REC building. And so we hired Jewel and Associates to come in and conduct a feasibility study or a report to say how much would it cost to purchase either one comparatively and remodel them. And when those numbers came back, it was significant. They were both above $950,000 each, which was more than what we could afford. So we respectfully contacted both Greg Vitesnik and Shannon Clark and told them thank you for their patience and their willing to work with us, but it was beyond what we could afford at that time. And so we moved on. And it was shortly after that Bob Simpson contacted my office, came down and made the generous offer of building a shell. And so he came and presented two drawings that he had an individual do for a new building and said, I'll put the shell up for you if you have the ability to put the rest of it together. And so this was going back to early 2019, late 2018, early 2019. 2019 comes around, he made his offer. And so we started that process and we had to find a location where we put it. There was some design work that was put into that. And then as we moved through that process, we knew that we weren't going to be able to hit any kind of construction deadline for 2019. So we would just wait. 2020 rolls around and the entire world rolls into a pandemic, which has an effect on everything. And I'm not going to belabor, all of that, but as the pandemic affected construction costs and everything else, and we were going through the process of putting together bid specs, how much would it cost? Mr. Simpson went out and got information as far as what it would cost to build a shell. And that shell came back at about $380,000, not counting the concrete. And so he met with myself again and two other members of our committee, and didn't ask us to postpone it, but just said, here, if it's going to cost me this much, it's going to cost all of you quite a bit of money too. And so at that point in time, we just kind of put things on hold. We still had site work to do. There was the site had been chosen out in the North Industrial Park, and not that it was necessarily the most opportune site, but it was a site that was going to be able for us to use for, very minimal cost. The city was going to lease it to us for, I don't want to say nothing, but it was going to be very minimal. So it kept the cost down. And this whole time we have been trying to be as cost conscious as we possibly can, because we understand that we have X amount of dollars, period. And then we're going to have to come up with the rest if there is, extra funding needed. During that, there was some discussion amongst some gentlemen in the community about the REC building potentially being up for sale again, and probably at a reduced cost. We did have the REC building appraised when we were doing the kind of that comparative study, and it appraised at $550,000. So conversation among some community members, and Mr. Simpson was involved in that. And so he has pledged to put $200,000 towards the purchase of the REC building. He wants to do something for the community, and he knows that there is a need for a new ambulance station, a new emergency services building. Subsequently, Shannon Clark had conversations with his board, and it is our understanding that they will sell the REC building for a reduced cost of $350,000, which is what they have listed as a liability on their books. So with the $20,000 reduction in the purchase price and a generous donation of Mr. Simpson at $200,000, it now made the RAC building become the more fiscally advantageous one for us to go to, and one that we could pursue potentially and still be mindful of what we've been given as far as funds to use. So that brings me before you. And so in your packets, you should have a budget that was outlined, the questions that have come up, who put that budget together for you. And that's put together by Paul Kardasky, the engineer from Jewell and Associates. And this morning, hopefully, you were able to receive the updated one. So there is an updated one that I sent out via email. And I'm not sure if I got my request in, to help them to get into your folder. The one kind of outlined $94,000 for HVAC. And so we did have inspections done. We had a roof inspection done. Jules hadn't done an inspection. System inspected, just wanted to know what the age was, what we were going to get into, the electrical system, and then also what the sprinkler system was going to cost to have the building sprinkled, because we're changing the outline or what the building is going to be used for. And the HVAC system came back at $94,000, but that was because the individual that put that together put together what he felt was the system that we needed, and not just what do we need to change to meet code compliance and bring the system to a more update. And so that new number in the HVAC system went from $94,000 down to $63,750. And what that does is give us the ability to use what's in there already, because some of the units are fairly new, replace what needs to be replaced, and then set the system up so that it can be more energy efficient. So the total cost of the project that we can come up with and working with the engineers is $543,644. And if we go with a 15% contingency of $59,000, that puts the overall project at $602,690. Now we have used some of the Fund 75 money. We had site work that we needed to do, what we were anticipating going out to the North Industrial Park. There was some legal fees that we had to pay for. And so the current balance of that fund is $576,238.62. So $576,238.62. So if we take the cost of the building, we basically have in that account about we have the estimated cost plus about $32,000 for contingency, with the remaining $27,000 if we had to use all $602,000. That will come out of the ambulance's operating budget. So this process has been a long one, but I think in many ways it's been a good one, because we can certainly say we've crossed a lot of T's and we've dotted a lot of I's and we've looked at a lot of options. I think that the committee can walk away, and I know that I can, knowing that we're trying to do the best by the taxpayer. We're not looking for a Taj Mahal. We just want something that's functional. And I think that the taxpayers would approve for us to have something functional. It'll be a better circumstance for us to operate out of in that facility than what we currently have right now. And there's some bonuses to it, the location, being that it's the way it's built, it's pretty hard. It already has a generator on site. Easy access to Highway 14, the bypass to get to, on the other east side of town. And it also gets us quick access to Highway 80, which is our farthest travel time. So besides all of that, it will be a huge recruitment tool. Right now, we have individuals, if we have more than one person staying at the station, we want a cot. If we have more than two people staying on the couch, if we have more than three people staying at the station, now somebody's on cot. And they sleep in the file room or they sleep in the radio room. And it's really impeding our ability to recruit, especially when it comes to trying to fill any full-time, part-time slots, because when they come here, we don't have anything to offer them. We don't have amenities such as a place where they can cook a meal, where they can do their laundry, where they can take a shower after a call, actually have bedroom.
Okay, just so folks know, mind, someone's not muted, and so just check and make sure in the lower left that you're muted. That would be helpful. We're just getting feedback from someone. So I think we'll take questions from committee members at this point. So does someone want to start off with questions besides myself?
I hate to butt in so soon.
That was very smooth. You did not butt in. You're okay. Go ahead, Mr. Sen.
I have a couple of questions. First, we may have some later. Darren, thank you for a very fine presentation. I know you worked very hard on this. You mentioned that the HVAC was originally set at 94. And someone said that based upon what you need, it would be 63. And what was the difference between what you need and what the standards are?
So what they had recommended was a complete demolition of everything in that building and all brand new. And there are 2 units in there, train units that were installed in 2019. And there's another carrier AC unit that is a high capacity unit that used to cool the computer and server room. They were going to scrap all of that. And so we came back and said, whatever we can reuse, we need to be able to reuse. And so that's where the big reduction came from.
Was there any independent evaluation of that HVAC system?
That's what we initially had contracted to have done. This person, what we needed them to do is break out what's the code issues, which was how many air turns per minute in a building that size with X amount of people in it. And what's the life of some of the equipment that needs to be replaced. And we do know some of it does need to be replaced, that it is end of life. But we didn't need to scrap everything. You know, there's some of that can be reused. It just needs to be reconfigured and put in a different location.
So everyone is confident that the $63,000 is adequate to give you what you need without anticipating future maintenance problems.
Yep, so the 63,000, what the consultant or the person that came in and evaluated the HVAC, is he listed out in there as items 1 through 4 were code issues, and he set a price to those. And then the items that he thought would be a bonus, he set those out, and we took the dollar amounts from his proposal minus a complete overhaul.
There's always a caution when you buy somebody else's used car that there may be some junk issues, but it sounds like you've done a good job analyzing this. And the other question I had specifically was, maybe I wasn't paying attention, but can you tell me about the roof a little bit?
Sure. So we do know, we did have a roof inspection done. We went out last week, went up on the roof. The roof was installed in 1992. It's a 30-year roof. So the warranty will be up in 2022. There are 4 specific areas that need some maintenance done to them. The roof overall itself is in really good shape. And the person that did the roof inspection said that you would have 2 years if you don't do some of the maintenance work that is going to be suggested, and you could have up to 4 years before you would need to replace the roof.
So are you saying that the roof needs to be replaced in 4 years?
We'd be looking sometime 4 years or after, yes.
And do you anticipate what that cost would be?
So we met late last week, and I have not had those figures in in my hand, but it is something that the ambulance service would consider an item they would have to budget for on a yearly basis. Put that money aside until the time comes to replace it.
And you say the roof is supposedly has a life until 24 or 22?
2022 is, it's a warranty is up in 2022.
Yes. But you could make the roof last until 2024, according to the experts who looked at it.
At minimum. If we don't do anything to it, 2 to 4 years is what he gave me, depending on if we do any of the maintenance work that he pointed out. And one of the items as far as the roof that Shannon Clark had mentioned to the Joint Ambulance Committee is that he would work with us to ensure that we had a good roof on that building before we took ownership at no extra cost. So Brian McGraw, the Joint Ambulance Committee Chair, and I plan on sharing these reports with Shannon on Friday and discuss with him what options there are available to take care of the items that were mentioned, to get, more life out of it.
A new roof could probably cost a couple $100,000.
I'm not sure on that size. I wouldn't want to speculate.
Did we have an opinion from our consultant, Mr. Brewer?
No, I don't believe so. You didn't consult Russ Mullen?
We attempted to reach out to him several times, and then when he finally did get back to us, he said it was going to be $1,800 just to look at the roof. So we found another consultant that would.
Clint, maybe you have the figure on the recently installed roof at Health and Human Services. Probably pretty close to similar sized buildings, I would guess. You have that figure?
That I think is much higher than 200,000.
Do you have that figure, Clint?
I think with the invoices that have come in, I'd have to reference back to them, but off the top of my head, I think it's around $40,000. But we're still waiting on the third billing to come in.
I'm not sure if you caught that entire question, Mr. Lindgren. What was the replacement? What was the roof replacement cost for the Health and Human Services building? That number sounds a little low.
Yeah, I've got $40,000 worth of bill right now. I'm still waiting on the final billing to come in. I can reference it to go back and look at the estimates if you can hold.
Sounds good. Just let us know when you're ready with that. Let's see if other committee members have questions.
Like all buildings that you retrofit, at Health and Human Services, for instance, we had problems with just what you were talking about, air circulation and not getting cold air over here and not getting warm air over here. But it seems to me that that building already has, it's already been split up into cubicles, I guess, or offices. So a lot of that planning probably has already been done and has been accomplished there, I would think.
In regards to the HVAC system
Yes.
at REC. Yeah, one of the bigger expenses was the fact that there's an older unit in the garage that has to be removed. And they've got a air conditioning unit in the garage that they were using to recapture heat. That has to be removed. They're both end of life and you can't have it inside that garage space. So that's where some of that cost of the $63,000 to get better air turn in the garage.
And then I heard, ironically, that one of the issues there was wiring.
The only thing, so there was this concern that there was ungrounded outlets and all that, and they didn't come up with anything like that. So the one code issue that needs to be addressed is there's no primary disconnect from the feeder line from the city before it gets to the generator. It's going through the generator to the transfer switch and out. So that needs to be corrected. That's the code violation. And then there was an older Westinghouse service panel, but in the course of remodeling, you would probably just replace it anyway. So those were the two issues for electrical work.
Thank you.
I'm just pleased that that's going to become available because I think it's an excellent location. you have enough bays for your ambulances, I assume. And there's a kitchen, and it wouldn't make much to make private bedroom or two, or split it between male and female, and how many bathrooms are there?
So, yeah, one of the things that was kind of appealing to this is that there's, we're not gonna have to do anything as far as office space. Two of the offices will become bedrooms. The bathrooms, two of them are already ADA compliant. The third bathroom that they don't use, the larger one, that will become for shower, put a shower room in it. We kept the renovations to this at a minimum. I mean, bare minimum. One, just to be respectful of the fact that we're doing this on the taxpayers' dime, and two, it just needs to function. We need functionality. So, to put the extra 4 bedrooms in there is going to be a little bit of construction cost, but the initial layout, it's 8,400 square feet, and it will certainly meet our needs.
Mr. Chair, this is Administrator Langrick.
Go ahead with that figure.
So a little complicated when we, our contract with Malley, who's doing our roof replacements, the community service building and the Simons Recreation Center were put together on the same base bid project. So the two projects together were bid at $342,000. In looking at our other buildings to do a comparable size, then if we're looking at the roof replacement on the UW Platteville Richland Miller Memorial Library was bid at $77,000. Melville Hall was billed at $91,000 and change. Roof replacement on East Hall was bid at $13,000. The Science Hall was bid at $95,000. So if that kind of helps them paint a perspective on how much the. Oh, wait a second. Here we go. So the two items sorted out. The community service building was bid at $212,000. Simon's Recreation Center was bid at $130,000, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and I believe those numbers might be a little more comparable because those are flat roofs versus the ones you were reading from the UW campus. I believe those were not flat roofs. Those had some pitch to them. Do you know, am I remembering that correctly? I thought that the bidding we did was for the pitched roofs, and the insurance covered the flat roofs at the campus. Am I remembering that right? So we weren't actually bidding out flat roofs at the campus. We were bidding out the roofs that had some pitch to them. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that, so it sounds like the comparable that we have Mr. Soup is somewhere in the range of $100,000 to $225,000. Sounds like the Health and Human Services building was 200 some thousand. One question I've got from Mr. Gudgeon, is there a contract under development with Mr. Simpson? And if so, when would that contract be entered for that donation? How can we get some guarantee that Mr. Simpson might not change his mind again?
Yeah.
Is my question, especially since we already spent 25 grand on another idea that didn't come to fruition.
So I met with Core Counsel, Michael, I apologize, I don't remember his last name. And probably what we came up with for an alternative was to include it into both the resolution and the offer to purchase, so that if he were to back out, which I don't feel he would, but again, good business is making sure that things are on paper and everybody's on the same page. But it would be put into the offer to purchase, so that if for some reason he were to back out, then we would just stop. We wouldn't move forward with anything else.
Okay, and then, I just want to say, I did meet with Mr. Gudgeon and Mr. McGraw a few weeks ago. They were kind enough to sit down with me and explain the ambulance budget and this whole project and process, and I learned a lot by sitting down with them. I know in the past I voted against spending money on the ambulance because I have concerns about taking on a new building when we already have this building to upkeep. But I understand that there are issues with the garage in this building and the basement. But in general, I've had also some concerns about investing in just one of the ambulance districts in the county when we taxed the entire county. And I know that in the past, I think some people, when I expressed that concern, you know, the response was, well, what are you gonna do when you get in a car accident in Richland Center? Who's gonna help? And I didn't answer that concern in the past at that meeting where that was brought up, but the reply I heard from people in further out parts of the county who have concerns about this project is, well, yes, but the same is true when you are driving through Viola or another part of the county. So I did do a little research to find out, you know, of the 600 grand, you know, what's the entire cost and how much of it was funded by taxpayers outside of the Richland Ambulance District? And it's about a 60-40 split. So 60% of the county is covered by the Richland Ambulance District as far as the value of the property. So one of my interests has been, you know, is there room in the ambulance operating budget? And I think I know the answer now with this roof question out there with the REC building, to reimburse property taxpayers outside of the Richland Ambulance District. That figure would be $263,000 when you figure the interest for the 600 grand project and that would be split between the Cazenovia, Lone Rock, Blue River, Viola, and a couple other ambulance districts that are in the county. So, you know, in general, I don't think all my concerns could be taken care of. I'm open to, I don't know that you guys need me, you know, because you might have the majority anyway on this, but, you know, I do wish that at a minimum, we could at least figure out how to reimburse or take some of this money that we're investing into this ambulance district and make sure it's either invested in those other ambulance districts or just returned to the property taxpayers outside of Richland Ambulance District. So in general, still got some concerns with this, but I hope the project goes well if the county board decides to go forward here. And I hope the REC building is a good investment and it's not gonna cause too many problems like we already have that we're trying to fix in this building. So.
Thank you.
Mr. Brewer, go
May
ahead.
I speak? I think, and I appreciate what you're saying, Sean, because I've heard this not only from you, but from some of those folks who live in the other ambulance districts. And I think that one thing that isn't always considered is that we're talking about a place for emergency government or whatever you want to call emergency service beyond the ambulance. I mean, we're going to house Darren over there and the things that he's got. There's a lot of offices downstairs if you're in that area, and that'll be part of it. But the other part, the overall question is what does county government do? What is the purpose of county government? And one of the reasons that county government is there is to provide a service for underserved needs or areas. And one example would be the meal centers that I hope will get up and running here shortly, if not already. But this is certainly a need. You're talking about 60%. Were you talking about population then, or land mass area?
Property tax base.
Property tax base. And so that may be, your figure may be slightly different when you look at population numbers. So probably over 60% of the population, maybe pushing 70%, is going to benefit from this service, which isn't going to happen unless the county can help out. And this is a way that we can help out. And I appreciate, and maybe I promise that we'll work on that other challenge. Is there any way that we can, but I don't think it would be strictly just saying, okay, we'll give you back 40% of your tax. I know you're not speaking of 40% of the total tax bill, but we need to really closely examine that whole issue. And once again, I think the big thing is we've got to emphasize is where the county is providing and stepping in where there's an underserved need. And that's what we're doing.
Okay, Mr. C.
I can understand your reasoning as well as Mr. Brewer's. I also have to think about this rationale. We have several other districts servicing with ambulances, and they are each have their own district lines, supposedly, Darren. Is there a possibility that we can look at this as two different entities? One is the county-wide emergency government service, which is one budget, and the other is the district-wide ambulance service, which has parameters within 60% of the tax base, you say. Is that correct? 60% of the tax base is served within that's the parameter, that's the board of the district line for the service?
That's correct.
Okay, so it seems to me that it would be logical to have the emergency government service portion of the expense, a portion allocated as countywide. But I can understand, and I'm sure others of us can understand, why people in other districts would be concerned. They already have a district in Casanova. I'm not just speaking of Casanova, but they have an ambulance district and a fire district. And the cost of this is assessed within the parameters of their district. The taxpayers within their district pay for that service, for the ambulance service and for the fire service, which is a separate entity. But so they're already paying their bill, and now they probably are wondering why we should be paying for another district. That same logic or rule, it seems to me, would apply to any of these districts who fund themselves through their own district and parameters as a tax base. They assess, the Casanova Fire District assesses the people within the taxpayers within the borders of their district. So I can understand their concern, and I think it might be helpful to apportion at least, which is a countywide service, the emergency government service countywide. But I can also understand that we need maybe to give thought to the idea of apportioning a district that is only 60% of the tax district to others who are already paying their freight.
Okay, let's just check and see if.
That's all I'm going to say.
Thank you. Let's just check and see if Mr. Cooey wants to say anything. I know you haven't had a chance to speak up yet.
Okay, so if we take that $600,000 and then you, what's the increase to their taxes would be my first question of that $600,000, not the 3 million, of the $600,000. Okay, so that's one point. The other point is unfortunately or fortunately, we spend a lot of money fixing roads, we spend a lot of money fixing campus, fixing all that stuff. And to me, it's no different. Not everybody utilizes them things. And we still borrow the money or do what we have to do to maintain all this stuff. And not everybody has the opportunity or chooses to use it. So we borrow $1 million a year to fix roofs on buildings, to do this, to put roads in, whatever the case may be. I get it, you don't always get, you know, it isn't always gonna be your road that gets fixed, or it isn't always gonna be your building that you use. But it takes all of us to make this whole. And that's where I guess I kind of have a problem with it. I don't have a problem paying my fair share for the good of the county. And there's certain things that I don't use, but somebody else here does. And I think if you look at the population, the majority of the population is in that district. Now, they may not be taxpayers, I get that, but we still have to provide a service for them people. I mean, we have to take care of the people that are in this county. And I understand that they can be frustrated because they're not gonna use the ambulance, but I'm gonna tell you what, they will use that ambulance because sometimes Darren has to go into that district because they need help. And so saying that they'll never use that district is not necessarily true. But it's for the good of all by doing this, and I just hate to see us not do anything because of that. And I'm not against trying to help support the outlying districts. And we do to some degree now what we can already with the ambulance. And we are backup for all of them. So, you know, we already got some into this anyways. And I just, to me, it seems foolish not to go forward with this. This is the best option we've come up with. They've done a lot of work. The ambulance committee's done a lot of work. Darren and Brian, they spent a lot of time working on this. The ambulance committee in the last 6 years has come from absolutely nothing to finally being a very well-run operation, I would say. And we need to continue to go that way, and we won't be able to if we don't get this done. And then the other thing is you're gonna take $200,000. I'll tell you what, that $200,000 will get thrown in the ditch somewhere, and you'll never see it for anything else other than that.
Okay, thank you. So just to answer your one question about the 3 million versus the 600,000. So I asked Ms. Worth to come up, what would the interest be on just the $600,000 portion? And the interest, and that's over a 5-year period, because we took out a 5-year note for the 3 million. So the portion of interest for just the ambulance is $62,000. So the total project cost over 5 years is $662,000. And then if you take that 662 times 60% for the tax base in the Richland Ambulance District, that's $399,000. If you take that 662 times 40% for all the tax base outside of the Richland Ambulance District, that's $263,000. So that's how it splits out. And then I'm not, Mr. Seep, I think you wanted to say something else, but I don't know if Ms. Gentis, you have anything to add?
I do, but I don't want to be overbearing about this.
Let's give Ms. Gentis a chance and then you can go.
I understand what you're saying about finances in the 60 and the 40. But if you get into Richland Hospital from Casanova, and then you go to Madison, you go with you, right?
It would necessarily wouldn't be the truth on the case. It would really based on two things. One, what level of care that patient needs. So they might go by a paramedic level service, Tri-State, Baraboo, Reedsburg are the more common ones. It might be a MedFlight, MedLink.
Yeah.
It could be by us if we have a second crew staffed, but it wouldn't always be by us.
Okay, Mr. Seep, go ahead.
Yes, I appreciate Mr. Cooey, as I always do, his comments. I think there's a distinction between, is my mic on?
Yes.
There's a distinction here that needs to be emphasized. The county road, the highway system, is a county-wide system, and it's available to everyone in the county. Whether they all use it or not, it's available to everyone. The campus is a county's supported system that is available to everyone in the county, not just the folks in Richland Center. And it's defined differently. The perimeters or the parameters of the service provided by the ambulance district are defined to a certain territory. Our other services, our highway department, our support of law enforcement or what have you, are available services to all citizens of the county, and all citizens of the county participate in supporting those services. Here, we are defining an entity that is available on the books. It's available basically to a defined territory. You say 60% of the tax base. And of course, there's some cooperation between the other fire districts. You say that on occasion you service, you help out other districts. They also come in and help out. That's an understood thing. They've always done that from time to time. But we have to appreciate the viewpoint of those citizens who are outside of that parameter, who are paying their own freight, and now they're asked to pay the additional freight of another district. That's different because they're paying for the freight that's distributed to a defined area. And that's not the case. You have a false analogy there, and I hate to accuse you of advancing false analogies because you're a brilliant man. But it's not the case that the county highway system or the college system or the other services of the county are the same as this. They're not. They're not analogous. It's a false analogy. But I think you're a brilliant gentleman. I respect it. I respect your viewpoint.
So just to respond to that, so they were all part of this ambulance committee, and every one of them chose not to be a part of it. So the service would still be provided to them, but they made a choice not to be part of it. I know that because I've been on that committee basically since it started. So there was a choice that they all made to go somewhere else. So the service is still provided for them. They just chose to go somewhere else.
You're talking about something different again. You're talking about the 2 or 3 townships that decided to go elsewhere and not be a part of this district.
Correct.
That's different than those organized.
I understand that, Mr. Steve. I get that.
Yeah, I
But
know.
my point is that the service is there. And they have the opportunity to be a part of the service.
You mean the folks in Boaz and Lone Rock and
The
Casanova?
ones that chose not to be in it.
Well, that's different again. Talk about
We can talk about it different all day long. I get that. I get that. But we're at a point here where I don't feel, I think we're looking at the few versus the many.
Okay,
That's my.
yeah, fine. All I'm saying is you have to consider the reasoning of some of those folks. And I am not here in any way to second guess the hard work that's been done to put this thing together, and I appreciate that very much. And I'm not trying to denigrate in any way the idea. I'm a little concerned about the roof here. Those are my 2 concerns.
Okay, I'm just gonna jump in here, and I think unless, the committee wants to disagree with this, I think we're probably ready to vote, so let's go ahead and get a motion and a second on the floor. So the motion that we need today is to allow use of fund number 75 in the purchase of the REC building and renovation for an ambulance garage and emergency management center, as well as to recommend a resolution of the, related to all of this, to the county board for their, I believe it should say July 2021 meeting. So is anyone willing to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
No, second.
Motion by Brewer, a second by Cooey. And then I think we need to go ahead and vote so we can move on and do other things as well. I think we've had a really good debate today, and I'm I don't think we're gonna do much more swaying, but it's nice to be able to get some of these issues out there that we haven't had a chance to discuss before. So, Mr. Bell, if you could take a roll call vote and probably come up to this chair between Mr. Seep and Mr. Gudgeon. I think that microphone is probably what would work, and then folks online can hear this as well, so.
Okay, can you hear me? Mr. Brewer,
Yes.
Mr. Murphy Lopez,
No.
Mr. Seep,
Aye.
Mr. Cooley,
Aye.
Ms. Jensen.
Aye.
4 yeses, 1 no.
Okay, so that motion passes. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Gudgeon, for coming, and thank you to Mr. McGraw too for being in attendance today. So this will go forward to the county board at our July meeting. So moving on to agenda item number 6, budget guidance, Mr. Langrad.
Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I've got the document here pulled up today. Mr. Chair, looking today for a motion to adopt the 2022 operational budget guidance and budget packet and disseminate to departments and partners. The background on this item is in efforts to direct and manage a process that results in a successful adoption of a budget that meets the county's priorities for 2022. A proposed budget guidance packet is prepared for consideration and action. The document lays out the goals, constraints, and expectations the departments will adhere to in creating a preliminary budget and advocating for services. Items in this document are intended for distribution tomorrow, if we can reach an agreement on it, and follow on committee action in accordance with the proposed timeline. The document here is, there's some changes from last time that we met, but again, to kind of review over the items here, we're looking for objectives that we're laying out on behalf of the county in regards to levy, our services, our response to the COVID-19 impacts, capital improvements and capital outlays, preservation of undesignated general fund, wage and benefits, our budget challenges and assumptions that we're going forward again into this year include Chapter 54, Chapter 44 placements with an increased estimate and ensuring that have that accounted for. Land Conservation Department of ensuring that we have the inclusion of land tech and rent, which was intended to be passed in this year's budget, but was not accounted for in the budget strings. We have unfunded mandate potentially for a district attorney office position, estimated $65,000 estimate. We're incorporating wages in zoning and landing information with reduced use of the land information grant. Applied funds from Pine Valley revenue amount and from reserve amounts to be determined. And I've had discussion with Administrator Reslow regarding this. Increase in wages. We've had estimates on our general and Pine Valley, and this again is in context of trying to bring our wage schedules up to the current level with the CPI or the Consumer Price Index adjustments for our compensation plan over the last 4 years. Having our estimated levy increase from net new construction, we're anticipating $35,000. We're anticipating potential use of general fund surplus to address gaps. And then we may have access to American Rescue Plan funds as well to help with that. We have a summary from our 2021 budget to kind of put context on where we're coming from and what our last year's or current year's budget is currently done for us. We have a review on our fund assignments to ensure that each department body understands which funds that they are responsible for. We have a timeline. We did compress our timeline for having departments submit their budgets back to us for sake of ensuring that we have them in before we have a couple different vacation times coming up for staff and ensuring that we get it in, get it processed, and get it out to folks to review then in anticipation of presenting the preliminary budget. But we do have the timeline laid on there, as well as then the dates and times that we're anticipating in having each department or committee present their budgets. And again, it's very compressed, but the mindset is that they're going to be doing it underneath a formatted type of a summary sheet that we made action on to adopt, which is intended to kind of help break it down and allow the administrator and the Finance and Personnel Committee to kind of have a review prior to, so that when we hit this timeline and Health and Human Services has 30 minutes to present, that they're going to be kind of probably heavily advocating for add-in projects or different changes that they're asking for consideration. And we'd be able to ask questions based on those summary types of documents. We do have 2 alternate or callback days that are tentatively scheduled. And we have some additional guidance here for department heads as well as individual for child support, which is in regards to our attorney fees and how it's going to work with our assistant corporation counsel based on our new configurations with our switching to Ab Swain for corporation counsel services. And then we have the instructions here for departments. We'll be telling each department to come in at a 0% levy use increase. And then we have our information on the projected wage step increases, which will be distributed out through the administrator's clerk's office for many of the departments. We're estimating a health insurance increase of 7%. Still pending yet on exactly what the recommendation from myself coming forward to the Finance and Personnel will be in regards to a broker, a plan provider, as well as any types of plan changes in the design. We have our Wisconsin retirement system information in. I'm sorry here, I'm lagging at the second. Gonna have to back out of here. There we go. The additional information on here is again a capturing of our capital outlays, capital improvements, and instructions again for submitting information back. So the big pieces today of looking for what the Finance and Personnel Committee is approving again comes down to budget objectives and then the guidance to departments so that we ensure that when we hit our preliminary budgets, we've laid out expectations and kind of defining the problems that we're going to be asking departments to help us solve. Mr. Chair.
Okay, I'm going to start us off with a couple of questions on this one, and we can go around to other committee members. So one question for you, Mr. Langreich, is what format will the numbers come in? So will those be in the narrative that are in that 6B 2022 budget summary? Or will those be included as an attachment? And what's the format for how we're gonna see those numbers? Will it be that old way that we used to look at it, like those really complex spreadsheets that sometimes can be, 10, 20, 30 pages long? Or is it gonna be summarized for us, the numbers? That's my first question.
The summary document that we kind of looked at, that Word document, is what is intended as a summary over the entire budget. And then past that, I'm looking at having then the stack of the line item by general ledger string.
Okay, I understand. It does. And then with the 0% change, going back to your 6A document, budget objectives, and I think it says guidance. At the bottom of page 6, it says that waivers to exceed the 0% guidance may be addressed through the review process with the administrator and Finance and Personnel. So my question here is, will every department have to come forward with how they would handle a 0% change using the property tax levy, or will some of them be given waivers by you ahead of time?
No, I don't plan on granting any types of waivers prior to it. If there's departments that are coming in underneath budget and are not petitioning to try to do a restoration or expansion on a services to go over that 0% budget, there may not be a need then to have them present in front of the committee. But for folks that are looking to essentially break the rules here that the finance and personnel are going to be blessing off on, I would be asking them to bring the petition in front of you folks for a blessing to do that. Unless guidance is given otherwise.
Okay, and then I'm assuming that we are going to potentially make changes to some or all department budget presentations based on what we think we can do with, say, use of the general fund, or maybe there's other creative ways of doing it. So that will come later after the budget presentations. Is that, am I thinking of that right, process wise?
Yes, I'm seeing it as getting an understanding on underneath the constraints or the criteria, putting in forward. Departments are going to help us in problem solving exactly what has to bend, what has to flex, what has to be reduced. Them coming forward and saying, in order to make this work, I had to reduce this function, this position so many hours, we had to reduce this expenditure out of the budget. If you want this returned back in, it's going to cost this much. And then we'd have a collection of that across all departments across the organization. We'd be able to then kind of prioritize which services that we want to incorporate back in and at what expense, so that we can try to solve them with available funds or other types of revenue sources on how we can potentially manage those back into the department's budget. Does that answer your question?
That answers all my questions, and yeah, I'm supportive of how this is all laid out. I just wanted to understand some of that better. And I wanted to mention to the committee that I think it was last time Supervisor Luck asked if we could have Pine Valley back. Maybe someone else said it, but to talk about the budget implications from Pine Valley. Mr. Rizlo couldn't be here today because he had an appointment. So the plan is to have that on our agenda at the next meeting, and that relates to additional funding that could come in to change some of these 0% numbers from different departments. But I just wanted to let you guys kind of know when that agenda item is coming and when we'll learn more. So who else would like to? Ms. Gentis, go ahead.
Last year, the health insurance was 3.9% increase, is that correct?
That is correct.
Do we know for sure that it's gonna be 7%, or how will we know that?
We don't. We'll be waiting for the second quarter marks to come in, and then depending, presumably if we have Wallace, Cooper and Elliott, if we move to a different broker, we'd be asking them to reach out to Quartz to give us a cost bid to extend our agreement again for another year. The estimate is based on the fact that our run loss has ran more than our premiums paid in. And essentially, I think we kind of got away with the deal last year in getting it at 3.9 when our premium amounts to date this year have not covered our expenses going out. So based on our usage, we're anticipating that it's going to be a higher than a 3.9 and probably balancing over a 5% last year, 5% this year type of a number. So it's an estimate at this right now, but that gives our departments something to budget at. Best case scenario is that our renewal comes in under, and that would give us a little bit more room. The worst case scenario is it comes in over, and then we have an additional gaps to fill with our departments. Does that answer your question, Supervisor Dentis?
Okay, anyone else? Mr. Sheep, go ahead.
Yes, just one question. I didn't hear any provision. Is there a cause and effect relationship between evaluations of employees and compensation?
You're on mute.
Mr. Langberg?
Yeah, he was on
Can you
mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
No, we don't have any, we do not have a performance evaluation system that's in place that relates to increases in compensations.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so here we're looking for a motion to adopt the 2022 operational budget guidance and budget packet and to disseminate to departments and partners.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, motion by Cooey,
I'll second.
second by Brewer. So I think we're ready to vote on this one. So all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, that motion passes. So this will be going out to departments. So thank you, Mr. Langren.
Huh?
Agenda item number 7, the radio tower analysis contract. We've got Chief Deputy Porter here. Mr. Langren, do you want to start us off, or are we handing it directly to him?
Sure, I can just kind of get it teed up here. Looking today, Mr. Chair, for a motion to recommend resolution to the county, Richland County Board to accept the proposal for consulting services from True North Consulting Group regarding the county radio and tower analysis and improvement phase 2 for an amount not to exceed 21,000 from short-term capital fund number 92, line 8. And we have a small background here in regards to it. Essentially, we've completed our phase 1 and moving into phase 2. We did have previous resolution that allowed us to enter into a phase 1, and I will defer to Chief Porter to further help explain.
So when we took this initially, and I'm sorry, I'm not Chief Porter, I'm Finance Director Scott. But when we initially did the project, we took just phase 1. We discussed doing phase 1 and phase 2, and I really think that that was the intention, but it didn't come through that way. There was $46,000 that was set aside to do the radio study project. Unfortunately, all that was authorized was phase 1 in the resolution. So now we have to come back. Phase 1's been completed in order to get estimates and move forward on this project, which is not something, it's not an option. We have to do this. We need to go to phase 2. The phase 2 was quoted between $14,000 and $26,000. With what phase 1 cost, we don't have $26,000. We will set a cap at $21,500, which will bring us to the $46,000 that we have available. So the instruction to Mike Day at True North would be to proceed with phase 2 at a cost not to exceed $21,500.
Okay, so my only question would be, in the cover sheet, it says 21,000. Should that instead, are you saying that should be $21,500?
Mr. Langer, can you tell me how much you've gotten in for bills? Because I haven't seen those.
I can wait one.
And I don't know if anyone else has other questions that aren't related to this. Maybe those can be answered. If not, we'll just wait for Mr. Langer so we can get this right.
I could ask a question while we're.
Yeah, go ahead.
So Barb, if they're not gonna tell us, well, we can't give you the final page of our report because you're $1,000 short here, are they?
No, I don't think that would be the case at all. In fact, we do have the recommended report. If you look out on your iPads, it's also fully been posted, I believe, online. So we have that report. This is to go forward and build the specs for people to come in and bid to replace the system. And that's the next step that we need to take because the system has to be replaced.
My concern would be, do we need to put more than 21.5 in the pot?
As a finance committee, I can't tell you if you have that to give. the quote was 14 to 26,000. I can have a conversation with, Mr. Day. However, I talked to Sean and Mr. Meinberg, and we really believe that 21.5 is probably appropriate.
Yeah, this is far too important a project to have it delayed for some money that we're probably gonna spend anyway. Not throwing away money, but gotta get it done.
The other option that we have is if the cost was approaching that and we needed to pull forward, we could go to LEJC to pull out of some of the sheriff's department's funds.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, go ahead.
could we introduce a contingency of, what is it, $500 or $1,000?
It's 5,000.
You
So
have,
I think that question might be best answered by Mr. Langreich, because I believe he's tracking all of the uses of funds 92. So I think the reason the $21,000 figure is out here is because that's what was allocated for the radio tower project out of Fund 92. So I think that's why this bid that came in from the consultant was pretty loose, $14,000 to $26,000. Typically, a consultant has to give one figure, but it was within that, the 21 was within the range. So I think the idea here that I'm supportive of is just tell them don't exceed 21,000 without basically coming back, explaining it, and then having to figure out where the other funds would come from, whether it's Fund 92 or whether another fund. But I work in the consultant world. If you tell a consultant they can spend 26 grand, they're probably going to spend 26 grand. So it's usually good to hold the reins in a little bit so that they don't start billing principals and other high dollar people on it. That's my opinion. So I still think we're waiting on you, Mr. Langreich. Do you want a little bit more time? Should we come back to this agenda item to make sure we get the dollar figure right?
Yeah, I've got my 2 invoices here. Let me double check on them.
Okay, we'll hang tight for a minute.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
while we're waiting for Mr. Langford, like point of personal privilege.
Sure.
Mr. Brewer wasn't here, but my wife has been admonishing me after the last couple of meetings where I attended virtually, and she pointed out to me after the last meeting that she thought that I was aggressively butting in on the conversations of others at the meeting, and that I was a bit overbearing. So you weren't here when I apologized to the group, but since you're the chairman of the county board, I would like you to take note that I am apologizing for butting in virtually. I'll try to be more reserved. Mr. Chairman.
Apology accepted.
Thank you.
Looks
Mr.
like-
Chair, this is Administrator Langrick. I'm sorry, I'm butting in, unfortunately, and an apology for butting in, which I apologize myself. That's ill-formed. I thought we spoke a little bit too early. Are you ready for me, Mr. Chair?
Already.
Our contract amount that we have established through True North for phase 1 is $24,500 for phase 1. Our total bill that we have in place through May 31st, or the June 1st billing, which I don't see that I have one yet from for a June 31st date, but the billing that we have in place that we've paid out so far is $8,575. I don't know if that helps in solving the problem of where we're at, Director Scott, but that's the amount that we had anticipated and contracted with for phase one.
Mr. Chair.
I think we just need some direction from staff. Do you want us to approve for 21,000 or 21,500? I think it's really up to you guys. I think we trust you to know what's in it. Do we need to table this and come back to it?
I think you're okay to do 21.5 because looking at the timetable through the phase one evaluation, I anticipate that coming in under 24.5. I think you're fine to do 21.5.
Okay, Mr. Langren, is that okay?
I can support that. Thank you, Director Scott.
Okay, so I'm looking for a motion to approve, oh, and then I went to the next one. To recommend a resolution to the Richland County Board to accept this proposal for True North Consulting and for an amount not to exceed 21,500 from short-term capital fund 92.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion by Steve, second by Gentis.
Discussion.
Yep, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Langren, the Gregorian calendar does not have a June 31st.
That is correct. I apologize. It would be a June 30th billing that I'll be awaiting for next. Thank you for catching my mistake.
Procedures.
Okay, all those in favor of this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those say no. Okay, that motion carries. That will go forward to the county board now. Takes us to agenda, so thank you, Ms. Scott, Chief Deputy Porter. That takes us to agenda item number 8, ambulance fund transfer, Mr. Langren.
Okay, Mr. Chair, give me just a second here to get back into my other documents. Be able to share. Looking today for a motion to approve a resolution for the county board to transfer $20,000 out of the ambulance's operating budget into a new ambulance outlay account. The Joint Ambulance Committee approved a motion to transfer $20,000 out of its Fund 51, the non-lapsing ambulance operations account, and put into Fund 16, which is the new ambulance outlay account. This transfer is an annual practice of the committee in transferring from operations to ambulance outlay with intentions to build up funds for future ambulance purchase. Both funds are non-lapsing and in the control of the department or committee. Committee's authority for the transaction is defined in the committee structure document. In the committee structure document, it does give this body authority to make fund transfers between budget lines within the budget of individual departments or committees in the annual county budget. So this being said, we've kind of have motion language into here as approaching it as we have done historically and making a transfer based on a resolution. If you are of a comfort level of which I recommend, if we can just take an action to have the transfer done, and you do have authority to do this within the structure document, and this does not conflict with state statute, which would say if we were doing transfers from one department function to another, it would end up being kind of a budget amendment and then would require resolution. So Mr. Chair, if you are comfortable enough, we may not need a resolution, but just an action to transfer the $20,000 again from the ambulance's operating budget to the new ambulance outlay account. I would defer to Director Gudgeon for further questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so we need a motion to transfer 20 grand from 51 ambulance operating budget to Fund 16 new ambulance outlay account.
I'll make that motion. I'll second.
Okay, motion by Brewer, second by Cooey. Any discussion? All those in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, that motion carries and the $20,000 is moved. So that takes us to agenda item number 9, employee meals per diem rate, Mr. Langreich. Oh, you're on mute, I'm told.
Thank you. Can you hear me now, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Thank you. Looking today for a motion to recommend resolution to the Richland County Board to amend the Richland County Employee Handbook to increase in reimbursement for meals from $20 a day to $25 a day, and language changes as presented or amended. The meal reimbursement languages you'll see on here is the current language for the proposed amendments for the which rules and resolutions took action on for county board rules. The idea is to make them consistent with the employee handbook as well. So Rule 16 in your county board rules, we'd be striking $20 a day and substituting or adding in 25 and then changing the effective date. For the county board rules, we would be adding or incorporating the language of alcoholic beverage is not a reimbursable expense to match what is in the employee handbook. Underneath what was bullet 3, now bullet 4, detailed itemized receipts shall be required in all cases. Lodging invoices indicating room service charges will not suffice for reimbursement. And then adding in language on what is now bullet 5 for reimbursement of meals is only warranted when traveling out of the county on county business, which matches our current practice. All supervisor meal reimbursements must be approved by striking audit committee and adding in county clerk. Reason being is that most checks are kind of currently released before they release audit committee with a payroll process, and that we would have Clerk Kalish as our audit and our check and balance for reimbursements that are submitted from supervisors, eligible committee members, etc. We would then have the same type of language increases or changes to make it consistent then with our employee handbook, which would include the language of lodging invoices indicated in room service charges will not suffice, and that we're adding the language then that again that it's only for travel on county business outside of the county. All employees' meal reimbursements must be approved by the department head, which is current practice. So these are the proposed changes, the different consideration points that we addressed in kind of investigating this. We wanted to have an increase in expenditure. This amounts to a 25% or a $5 per day increase. We wanted to maintain the leniency at a day level. There's been discussion on can we have it at a week type of a leniency and allow for a person, say, to do like a grocery shopping on a Monday and have then the ability to spend 5 days on a Monday and submit the receipts. Led to some complications of what do we do if somebody then has a change in training or something like that, where they're only going to be there for part of it. And then also, then if somebody could somebody essentially do the same thing with a restaurant then on a given day, which might raise some concerns. Our auditing concerns, we still required our automized receipts for each day, linking the expenditures to the event, and then our approval again is transitioning for supervisors from the auditing committee to the clerk, and then affirming then the department head is the authority then for expenditures for employees. Mr. Chair.
Okay, so last Thursday, the Rules and Resolutions Committee approved this change to the county board rules. They approved recommending it to the county board. So that's going to be going forward to the county board meeting already. So now we're here at Finance and Personnel to see if this committee agrees with the change, just as it relates to the employee handbook though. So raising the meal reimbursement rate from 20 to 25 a day. So looking for a motion to do that and recommend that to the county board as well.
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval of the recommendation to the county.
Okay, motion by C.
I'll second.
Second by Cooey. Any discussion on this?
So when the police asked that they could buy groceries for the week, you decided because it might not last, it seemed a little silly to me.
So I asked that question at Rules and Resolutions, and what Mr. Langreich said was, if you still want to buy groceries, you can do that, but you just can't exceed 25 in a day. So say I wanted to spend $50 on groceries for the week, I would need to split that up between 2 days. I could do it, say, on Monday and Wednesday. So there would still be a way to do groceries. We heard that in the past, employees have been told that they cannot buy groceries. They can only go out to restaurants. But Mr. Langreck said that will not be the case moving forward, but there will still be this daily limit. Did I get all that right, Mr. Langreck?
Yes, that is correct. I guess, part of the other side of the coin that still remains out there with the using it over the entire week then is, well, if that's the expectation, you're going to eat groceries regardless if you're going training or serving back in the county. So then, at what point then do we need a meal allowance if we're going to be purchasing groceries to feed ourselves, since we have to eat regardless if we're within Richland County or out of Richland County? So that kind of touches on that conversation or that devil's advocate point as well, Mr. Chair.
Okay, any further discussion on this one? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, that motion carries, and that's going forward to the county board. Looks like you're getting a full agenda here, Mr. Brewer. Okay, that takes us to agenda item number 10, Pine Valley sign-on bonus, Mr. Langberg.
Okay, Mr. Chair, looking today for a motion to approve sending a resolution to the county board asking for an increase to the expansion of Pine Valley's sign-on bonus program, increasing the bonus amount for a new employee from 500 to 1,000, and increasing the bonus amount for the current employee who referred the new employee from 100 to 250, and expanding the program from just nursing department positions to now include activity aide, housekeeper, laundry worker, personal care worker, food service 2, lead cook, and maintenance worker. And I'm hoping that I have Chris Glassbrenner on to help further describe the actions and reasonings behind this, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so let's go ahead and get a motion in a second. We can see if there's questions.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Cooey, second by Brewer. Any discussion on this?
Just a comment that, I mean, this is an ongoing thing in every industry, every place that's trying to hire people. I feel your pain every day, just I understand exactly where you're coming from.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I don't hear any other comments, so all those in favor of this motion?
He's gonna talk.
Oh, do you want to listen? Do
Yeah.
you want to hear more? Oh, Supervisor Gentis would like to hear you talk.
What would you like to, I mean, I can give you a little background of why we're doing it.
Well, I understand some of it, maybe it's error, but I didn't quite understand the laundry worker and some of the other, it just
We're
sort of,
actually struggling to fill just about any position that's open. And I don't want
Would
to,
you mind pulling that mic closer to you?
sorry.
That's okay.
It's-
Even a little closer. It's a little awkward, but
Yeah, it was like, wait a minute, but it's not just because of COVID, but I think altogether it's becoming increasingly difficult to hire people. About a year and a half ago, when I would put an ad out for a laundry housekeeper, I would probably get close to a dozen applications. We right now currently have a position that is open and it's been open for the last 2 months. And I've interviewed 2 people who turned down jobs for other jobs. So we are trying to wrap our brains on how we can get staff in. So it's just another way to compete with Quick Trip, Walmart, the local factories on how to get the same people, how to get someone to work for us. So we're hopeful maybe this will help. That's why before, when we first created this, it was just strictly for nursing because we struggled for the nursing shortage for staff. But it's expanded to all departments now. We need housekeeping, we need dietary, we need nursing. So that's the whole expanding it will get us those people.
Does this cover everybody now? So everybody that works there?
Yes, the only people it's not gonna cover are people that are like in the business office or, we have what's called a resident assistant, which typically it's a high school student that comes after school hours. So we felt that those are not necessary positions, but yes, it's covering everybody. Right now, we don't need anybody for maintenance or activities. We're doing okay in those departments, but we don't know what's gonna happen. We have people that are close to retirement. We could see that as being an issue down the road too.
Okay, any other questions for Ms. Glassberg? Yep, Mr. C.
What is the entry level wage for the laundry worker?
It's under $12. I can't give you the specific amount, but I want to see it somewhere around 11.58 somewhere. I think starting rate.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, hearing no more questions, all those in favor of this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, that motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Glassbrenner. Okay, next on the agenda is agenda item number 11, vacation accrual discrepancy between the employee handbook and resolution 19-36. Mr. Langrat.
Mr. Chair, looking today for a motion to recommend amendment to resolution 1936, correcting a typo of vacation accrual from saying 3 work weeks at the end of 5 years to 3 work weeks at the end of 6 years, as indicated in the employee handbook and has been past practice. And I do believe I've got payroll and benefits specialist Tammy Hendrickson. If she is in attendance, I would defer to her to help kind of paint the history on this and how we identified the problem and why we feel that it's a correction to the resolution versus the handbook. Mr. Chair.
Okay, do you guys want to hear from her as well? Okay, yeah, so give me a nod. So you're up here in the hot seat. Go ahead.
I had an employee call me a few weeks ago.
Oh,
Somebody,
the microphone's got to be on. Just that button. Yep, there you go. And make sure it's
You
close
have to
enough.
kiss the microphone.
Yes,
want to.
there you go.
I had an employee call me a few weeks ago asking if he was gonna get 3 weeks of vacation at the end of 5 years, and I said, no, it's 6. And he pointed out resolution 19-36, where the board changed the vacation accrual usage from 12 months to 18 months. That it says in that resolution that it's at 5 weeks, 5 years that they earn 3 weeks of vacation at the end of the 5 years. And I said, no, we've been doing 6 years as long as I've been here, and I've been here a long time. And I pulled out the handbook, and the handbook does say 6 years. And so at that time, I didn't know if it was a typo or if there was a change and I wasn't aware of the change. So that's where we're at, is trying to find out if it's a typo or if it was a change. If it's a change, then I'll have to go back and fix all these vacation accruals.
I'm assuming that this was a typo by Corporation Counsel at the time? So that
I'm
would be
guessing.
your best guess?
That's my best guess.
Okay, I know that there's probably some interest in changing vacation time, but I don't think this was the way we envisioned doing it by accident. We'd want to do it maybe on purpose at some point.
Well, at the end of your 5th year of employment, it would be your 6th anniversary, so maybe that's where the confusion is.
Yeah, because it's at the end of 6 years, you get your 3 weeks, not at the start of your 6th year.
Okay, so I'm looking for a motion here to correct this typo in resolution 19-36 and send it to the county board.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, a motion by Brewer, second by Ventus. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, that motion carries. That's going forward.
I have a follow-up though for
Oh,
Tammy.
yeah.
What happened to that employee then?
Their anniversary is coming up in January, and so he was kind enough to bring it to my attention ahead of time, so that way we could correct it if we needed to get it corrected. Otherwise, he was looking to get 3 weeks of vacation at the start of his 6th year.
Okay,
Bummer for him.
Yes.
Okay, but thank you for bringing this to us, and I'm assuming that this might hit an agenda at a future meeting regarding vacation time and how much we currently give, and possibly changing that. Okay, thank you, Ms. Hendrickson.
Thank you.
So we're on to agenda item number 12, classification, compensation, and staff authorization policy. Mr. Langford.
Mr. Chair, looking today for a motion to approve amendments to the authorization table of the classification, compensation, and staff authorization table for existing health and human services positions identified, and to affirm recommendation to the county board for resolution. So this is a document that we took action on, I believe, last month. We have intentions of bringing it forward with a resolution for adoption I failed in seeing corrections brought forward from Director Thorson in regards to these positions, so looking to remedy and rectify them on here. They were laid out in the summary sheet, and the impacts are the APS crisis professional, I believe, was indicated at 2, and it is 1. Youth services manager, there should be 1 of those positions, and conclude, or as well as a supervisor. And then the child youth services case manager, we have 5 allocated, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so looking for a motion and a second on this one. Just to re-summarize, the motion is to amend the classification, compensation, and staff authorization table for the Health and Human Services positions and recommend this to the county board. So I believe it already went to the county board for approval, is that right? Or has it not been there yet at all?
It is not, Mr. Chair. I want to make sure that we get those changes on there prior to taking it to them.
Gotcha, great. Okay, so we'll be going forward to them for the first time, and I think that was at our last meeting that we approved this policy. But he just needs to make a few more changes with our blessing.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep,
Are you asking for a motion?
Yep, I am.
I offer a motion to approve.
Okay, motion by C,
Second,
second by Brewer. The only thing there was a lot of, last meeting, there was a lot of oxygen that was already out of the room, so I didn't feel like I could bring this up last time. But under the part about reclassification requests, I'm glad that those are going to be coming only once a year now. I just question, do we need to be going to a consultant to get their recommendation as far as whether a reclass request should be approved or not? If this body can overturn what the consultant is recommending, my question is that a waste of money, or is that still a valuable process to be going to the consultant? And I'm kind of curious about what other folks think about this. That was kind of my reason for voting against the reclass request for Pine Valley last time at the county board. So I don't know if you want to, I know you are an HR expert, Mr. Langreck, in your past at I believe it was Greene County. Do you think is the consultant necessary? Is that I just want to make sure like that should really be in here, because I don't want to waste people's money if we're just going to overturn the consultant recommendation.
The consultant recommendation ends up being kind of your third party, unbiased expert on it, if you will. Whether or not there's always many different variables of for a change or against a change. So how your view is on the consultant may sometimes align with what you may already have an opinion on. I see value in still having it as part of the system. I would say if we get to a point where we're consistently going against our consultant's view on things, then at that point, then we offload the need for it. The other part of it too is in still having a consultant involved. They're going to be able to help us with our overall evaluation of our plan in its entirety. And when we hit a point of when it comes down the road where we're going to do a reclassification study on all the positions, we still have a partnership and somebody that's been kind of keeping tabs on it so that they have a little bit understanding on our history and some of the challenges we're facing with the positions as we continue to progress for it. So I still see a value of it, but again, if we're constantly kind of going against what they're recommending to us, then at that point, then I would say we change direction, Mr. Chair.
Okay, that totally satisfies me. I just wanted to at least make sure we're talking about that at some point. Any other comments or questions? Yep.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's important to have independent analysis. $250 is not much money. In some cases, you may be talking about spending several $1,000s annually by an increase in wages or reclassification. So $250, if it's a yes or a no, makes a difference. I'm in favor of independent analysis.
Okay, thank you. Um, any other comments? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, that motion carries. So that takes us to agenda item number 13, future agenda items. So we've been working through some of the ideas from the past. I think I already mentioned one that's going to be coming forward next meeting that was suggested last time. Let's see, Ms. Gentis, do you have any future agenda items? No?
No.
Okay, Mr. Cooey,
No,
Mr. Brewer,
no,
Mr. C?
Not at this time.
Okay. That takes us to agenda item number 14, adjournments. Do we need to adjourn to a date regarding a closed session for union negotiations?
Don't we have one the 16th also and the 20th?
Mr. Leonard, do you know which is our next date? Is it the 16th for the closed session?
No, the 20th is
20th,
at 1 o'clock, right?
1 o'clock, 20th.
And the 16th is our second finance.
Got it. Okay, so our next
Yep.
our next meeting would be July 16th, Friday, July 16th for our regular second meeting, not the closed session. Okay, so I'm looking for a motion to adjourn till 1 PM, Friday, July 16th in the county boardroom and with WebEx options.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, motion by Cooey,
I'll second.
second by Gentis. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, that motion carries.
So we're also meeting though on the 20th at 1 o'clock, right?
Thank you, everyone.
I never know when
Have a nice week.
to turn my phone back on.
Thank you.
Wait, my phone back on is out the red, it's down, right?